So what is up, everyone? Welcome to my channel and welcome to another God of War Ragnarok video. Now for today's video, I figured I'd do a bit of a ranking video. Now I'm going to be ranking all of the major storyline bosses in God of War Ragnarok. So obviously I'm giving out a huge spoiler warning. If you don't want to know what any of the boss fights are, I would turn away now because I'm going to be talking about all of the major boss fights, and obviously with that there's going to be some major spoilers. Now I'm going to be ranking these based off of my least favorite to my favorite. A number of different factors are going to come into play, like just how much fun I was having during the boss fight. Like, is it a boss fight that I'm going to easily forget, or is it a boss fight that's going to stand out and be one that we talk about like 2 or 3 years from now? Now I'm not going to be ranking any of the mini bosses, I'm only going to be ranking the major story bosses. There's a couple mini bosses that it introduces you to in the story mode, but they aren't that important to the overall plot, so I'm not going to be including them in this list. Some examples of that are the Frost Phantom boss fight and the Huntress boss fight, so any of those little side mini bosses I'm not including. So with that said, let's go ahead and get right into the list. So coming in at number 10 for me is Gryla. Now do keep in mind, I did enjoy pretty much every boss fight in this game, so I did enjoy this Gryla boss fight. I just didn't like it as much as the others on this list. When it came to the pacing of the story and all the time that you spend here with Atreus, for me it started to drag on, especially when it came to riding the yak around, and it just felt like this section of the game for me was just dragging on because there was some really important stuff going on with the plot of the story at this moment, and I wanted to know what was going on with Kratos. So this entire fight with Gryla, I wasn't really focused on the Gryla fight, I was focused on just killing her as fast as possible so I could get back to Kratos, because at this point I was tired of the Atreus stuff and I wanted to get back to Kratos to see what was going to happen next. And I get why the Gryla fight's in the game, like it has some importance. I just wasn't that all into it, and you have to do this boss fight as Atreus, so I guess this was Atreus's, first boss encounter on his own, so I guess that's kind of cool. But for me, it's going to be sitting at number 10. So up next at number 9, I have Bjorn, which is the big bear boss fight, which is the first boss encounter in the entire game. And I don't really have anything against it, it's just not as good as the other boss fights. I mean, this is your introduction to the game, so obviously it's going to be an easy boss encounter, but I did like the reveal that this was Atreus. I had no idea that it was going to be Atreus, so it completely caught me off guard, and I just thought that was really cool. And it was a gigantic bear, and it was a pretty fun boss fight. I think it's a really good starter boss fight. It's just not a crazy over-the-top boss that is going to be one that people talk about like a couple years from now. So up next at number 8, we have the Vanadis boss fight, which is a Valkyrie, which we later find out is actually Freya. Now I'm putting this boss fight pretty low on the list because it wasn't that epic of a boss fight. I did like how they caught you off guard though, like you're in the middle of fighting just regular enemies and then this Valkyrie just comes out of nowhere and swoops you off your feet. I thought that was pretty cool, and at the moment I wasn't thinking that this was going to be Freya at all. It just never even dawned on me. So I did like the reveal that it was Freya, and I liked the little cutscene that happens afterwards with Kratos forcing Atreus not to kill her, and this was the start of their rekindled friendship. But for me it was a really quick boss fight, so it just doesn't stand out to me that much in comparison to the others, and that's why I'm putting it at number 8. So up next at number 7, I have Hrist and Mist. These are the two Valkyries that you fight towards the end of the game, and I thought this was a pretty enjoyable boss fight. I really liked some of the combo moves that they were pulling off, and I really loved the atmosphere and just all the different moves and explosions and everything that was going on in the environment I really liked. But at this point, after playing God of War 2018 and now this one, I fought so many Valkyries that I was kind of over the whole Valkyrie thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked fighting Valkyries, it's just, I've done this before. I've killed a lot of Valkyrie boss fights. So it was a cool boss fight, and I really enjoyed the environment. It just doesn't stand out to me as like one of those crazy over-the-top boss fights that I'm going to like really remember when I talk about this game in the future. So up next at number 6, we have Garm. Now Garm I thought was a pretty cool boss encounter, and Garm actually has multiple phases. Like, you don't just beat Garm and then it's over. Like, you beat Garm and then you find out that Garm actually isn't dead. He came back because you can't kill Garm. There's a phase where you're just running away from him and he's destroying the environment, and I liked just how big he is. Every God of War has like those classic you have to have a really big creature boss fight, and Garm was Ragnarok's big creature that you had to fight. I think they did a really good job of designing him. He's really cool, and I really like the outcome and like what happens to Garm. I really like the conclusion to the boss fight, and I thought it was a really good boss fight. I really enjoyed the Garm fight. So up next at number 5, I put the Nidhogg boss fight. Now the Nidhogg, I really love the design of the Nidhogg. It's like a lizard slash dragon thing, and it has Bifrost powers, and this is just a really cool design creature. And I'm probably a little biased here just because of just how cool the creature looks. But what can I say? I'm a sucker for like any sort of dragon looking creatures. I thought this was a really cool boss encounter. I thought it was really cool how you end up killing the Nidhogg and you completely cut its head off by closing up the portal. So I really love the blood and gore that happened in that boss fight. And I really love the design of the Nidhogg, and when I think of God of War boss fights, this one's going to stand out to me just because I think it looks so cool. So up next, coming in at number 4 for me, is the Odin boss fight at the end of the game. Now just because I have this at number 4 doesn't mean that I dislike the boss fight. I did think it was a good encounter, I just didn't like it as much as some of the other boss fights. For some reason for me when I played this game, Odin didn't seem that evil in comparison to a lot of the other God of War boss fights. Now I thought the Odin boss encounter was cool, he did have some unique abilities and there was multiple phases to the boss fight. It's just, I didn't have that, like, despise for this boss encounter. He's the final boss of the main story, and I didn't really have this major desire of, like, I really hate Odin, I have to kill him. And I didn't really feel much of a threat from Odin at this point, because all the heavy lifting and fighting and stuff was done by Thor and Heimdall throughout the game, so we never really got to see what Odin could do until the very end. And for me, I did enjoy the boss fight, I thought it was fun, I just didn't like it that much for it being, like, the final boss encounter. So up next at number 3, we have the second Thor fight. Now I did like the Thor fight more than the Odin fight, just because, you know, it's Thor. He's really big, he's well known, he has Mjolnir, he has lightning powers, he dwarfs Kratos in size, he freaking sent the World Serpent back in time with his hammer, so like Thor's extremely powerful, and I felt threatened when I was fighting Thor. Like when you're fighting up against Thor, it's unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen because Thor is a badass. And I felt like I was in trouble the entire time I was fighting Thor, because I know that Thor can take hits, so it felt like I was just beating on him and beating on him to no end. So I really enjoyed this second Thor fight because Thor was actually taking it seriously and he was going all out and he was using his lightning powers, and it just felt like a really powerful moment in the story, and it was really impactful for me, especially the end of the fight where you convince Thor that you don't want to fight and you actually get through to him, and then Odin just comes out of nowhere and kills his own son. It was kind of sad, and you know, that boss fight stands out to me, and I just really enjoyed the second Thor boss encounter. So coming in at number 2, my second favorite boss fight in all of God of War Ragnarok was the Heimdall fight. Now like I said earlier with Odin and how I didn't despise him, it's the complete opposite for Heimdall. I really remember this boss fight and it really stands out to me just because how much of a dick Heimdall is, and he's just an absolute douchebag throughout the entire story. Every time you see Heimdall, he's just being an ass. So we had to get this really cool spear just to fight Heimdall. There's multiple phases to the Heimdall fight, and then Kratos even gives him a chance to walk away. He doesn't want to kill Heimdall. And then he just keeps pushing Kratos and pushing him, and then ultimately he ends up dying. Because, you know, you don't fight Kratos and come out on top. So I think it was a really great boss encounter. It had a lot of emotional weight behind it because I absolutely despised Heimdall, and I'm glad he died, and it was just a really good boss encounter, and I just felt super happy once I finally killed him. And then coming in at the number 1 spot for me is the first Thor fight. Now this is the second major boss fight in the entire game, and this boss encounter just had so much impact for me because of all the hype around it. So it's been 4 years since the end of God of War 2018 where we had this little teaser of Thor showing up, and you know, we had no idea what was going to happen with the Thor encounter. There was all the speculation and hype and people talking about it, and this boss fight takes place really early in the game. So during the entire boss encounter, in my mind, I'm thinking, holy crap, Thor's a badass. I'm hitting him with everything I have and he's just mocking me and he doesn't seem to care. He's throwing me around like nothing. I really like the fake out they did where they smack you in the head with Mjolnir and you think that you're dead and you have to reload the checkpoint, and then he just does a fake out and he puts Mjolnir on you and shocks you and brings you back to life and you have to continue the boss fight. I thought that was a really cool mechanic, and during this entire fight I kept thinking to to myself, I have no idea what's going to happen because we're so early on in the game. Obviously, there's like hours and hours of content that comes after this. So as I was fighting him, I was like, are we going to kill Thor this early in the game? Like, what's possibly going to happen? And I just thought that this fight was really well done. It was a great introduction to the game and a great introduction to Thor and Odin. And this fight just really stood out to me more than the others. And I think they absolutely nailed this boss fight. And they did a really great job of showing just how badass and strong Thor is from this boss fight. So I absolutely love this boss fight, and that's why I'm putting it at number 1. So that is going to do it for my top 10 list of my favorite boss fights from worst to best. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. Let me see your guys' rankings down in the comments. I love doing ranking videos because I love seeing everybody's opinions down in the comments. Sometimes you guys agree with me, sometimes you guys don't. That's just the fun of it. But let me know your guys' list. I love to read them. And that is going to do it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting the subscribe button and hitting the bell for notifications. And that is going to do it for me, everyone. And I will talk to you all in the next video.